The footage is hard to watch. Kodak Black, shirtless and barely conscious, held upright by his own security guard on a Texas stage after showing up 9 hours late. Boozy said what everyone was thinking. But the real story isn't what happened that night. It's what fans found after digging. The Texas footage that stopped the internet. In early 2026, footage from a Kodak Black performance at a Texas venue began circulating across every major social media platform: Instagram, X, Facebook, and within hours, the clips had amassed thousands of views and reactions from fans, critics, and fellow artists alike. The videos depicted the rapper, born Bill Kahan Capri, shirtless, wearing a pink hat, leaning so heavily against a member of his security team that the guard essentially served as a human crutch, absorbing the full weight of a grown man who appeared incapable of supporting himself. Kodak's arm was draped over the man's shoulder as he reached toward fans at the edge of the stage, his body swaying in a way that suggested he could barely maintain his own balance. The overlaid text on multiple reposts read things like, "I'm crying," with laughing emojis, and 9 hours later, referencing the fact that attendees reported he arrived approximately 9 hours late to the event. That timestamp alone, 9 hours, meant that people who had arrived in the afternoon were now standing in a venue approaching dawn, watching a performer who looked less like he was about to deliver a set and more like he was about to collapse. That 9-hour delay would have been enough to ignite frustration among ticket holders who had paid to see him perform. Concert delays of an hour are standard industry grievances. 2 hours push the boundary of tolerance. 3 hours turn frustration into genuine anger. 9 hours enters a category that has no reasonable explanation rooted in logistics, traffic, or scheduling conflicts. 9 hours suggests something went profoundly wrong before Kodak ever set foot in that building. And the footage that emerged once he finally took the stage confirmed exactly that. The man in those clips did not look like someone running behind schedule. He looked like someone fighting to remain conscious, his movements sluggish, his interactions with the crowd disconnected from reality, his security detail functioning less like a protective entourage and more like a medical support unit tasked with keeping him upright long enough to fulfill a contractual obligation that should have been canceled hours earlier. Online, the reaction fractured into two distinct camps almost immediately. One side expressed genuine worry, flooding comment sections with pleas for him to seek help and tagging anyone they thought might have the influence to intervene: his management, his label contacts, other rappers who had publicly expressed concern in the past. The other side directed their anger squarely at his team, criticizing his entourage for allowing the performance to continue when the man on stage clearly needed a hospital room, not a microphone. The anger toward his inner circle was particularly sharp because this was not the first time fans had watched Kodak's team prop him up, both literally and figuratively, during a public episode. The pattern of enabling had become as predictable as the episodes themselves, and the Texas footage felt like the breaking point where even the most loyal defenders had to admit that proximity to Kodak Black without intervention was not loyalty. Among the public figures who weighed in, Boozy Badazz was the most direct. The Baton Rouge rapper commented on one of the circulating clips with a blunt forward assessment: "Dude need help for real, for real," a screenshot of which spread rapidly across platforms and became almost as viral as the original footage itself. Boozy has spoken publicly about Kodak's struggles in prior interviews, but this reaction, stripped of any diplomatic framing or industry courtesy, captured what thousands of fans were thinking, but struggling to articulate in longer posts. This was not a performance issue, not a scheduling mishap, not a bad night. This was a man visibly deteriorating in front of a paying audience, while the people responsible for his well-being handed him a microphone instead of a phone to call for medical assistance. The streamer Kai Cenat, while not issuing a brand new statement tied specifically to the Texas footage, found his older clips resurfaced and recontextualized in the aftermath. During a 2024 collaboration with Kodak on his Twitch stream, Cenat had noticed visible signs of substance use and prayed for the rapper on camera. At the time, those clips were treated as a single concerning moment in an otherwise entertaining stream. Now, viewed through the lens of the Texas footage, they carried new weight entirely, functioning as evidence that the warning signs had been visible for well over a year and that the trajectory Kodak was on had been apparent to anyone paying attention. Similarly, Kanye West had publicly offered to fly to Atlanta to help Kodak during a previous viral episode in 2025, the now infamous chicken-eating video that showed Kodak in a disoriented state, posting on social media about needing to support the younger rapper, despite his own well-documented frustrations with the music industry's treatment of artists in crisis. No new comments from Ye on the Texas footage surfaced in the days following its circulation, but fans referenced his earlier offer repeatedly as proof that even people with the resources, platform, and personal connection to intervene had been unable to pull Kodak out of the spiral. The implication was devastating. If Kanye West, with his billions, his fame, and his own experience navigating public mental health struggles, could not get through, what chance did a comment section have? What made the Texas footage particularly devastating was not simply what it showed in isolation, but what it represented in the broader, meticulously documented timeline of Kodak Black's public decline. This was not an isolated incident. It was not even a particularly surprising one to those who had been tracking his trajectory. It was the latest entry in a years-long pattern of public episodes that had been thoroughly cataloged across social media platforms, court records, and his own admissions in interviews, Instagram lives, and lyrics. To understand how Kodak Black ended up being physically held upright by his own security guard on a Texas stage in front of recording phones, you have to trace the full arc of his battle with substance abuse, a battle he has fought in various forms since before most of his current fans ever heard his name. The spiral, from Percocets to public confessions. Kodak Black's documented history with substances begins with a 2015 arrest for marijuana possession, a relatively minor charge that barely registered against the backdrop of his rapid rise from the Pompano Beach projects to national recognition. At that point, Kodak was still a teenager whose mixtapes were generating buzz, and a marijuana charge in the hip-hop world carried about as much weight as a parking ticket. Nobody, not his fans, not the legal system, not even Kodak himself, would have looked at that moment and predicted the decade-long descent it foreshadowed. But that arrest was the first visible crack in a foundation that would eventually give way entirely. By 2022, the charges had escalated to oxycodone trafficking in Florida, a felony directly tied to a Percocet prescription Kodak received after sustaining a leg injury from a shooting that year. The prescription was medically legitimate. The dependency it created was not part of the plan. Kodak later admitted that the Percocet, oxycodone in its branded form, became the gateway to a consumption pattern so extreme that describing it requires medical terminology to convey its severity. What began as pain management after a gunshot wound became a daily intake that would place him in a category of risk that most addiction specialists would classify as incompatible with survival over any extended period. The first time the public got a truly unfiltered look at the scale of his addiction came in December 2023. Kodak was arrested for suspected cocaine possession, though the substance was later identified as oxycodone, for which he had a valid prescription. During the Instagram Live that followed the arrest, he denied cocaine use categorically, but spoke with remarkable openness about his Percocet dependency. He revealed that he had spent $350,000 on rehabilitation programs, a figure that represented not just financial investment, but the sheer number of attempts he had made to break free from the cycle. He framed the spending as evidence of his commitment to improving himself for his children, insisting he was working on becoming a better person and a better father. Around the same time, he also admitted to past methamphetamine use in connection with the circumstances of the arrest, a revelation that stunned even those who had been following his struggles closely. But it was in June 2024 that Kodak delivered the confession that retroactively reframed every public episode, every erratic appearance, every courtroom hearing, and every concerned comment that had preceded it. During a performance, he addressed the crowd with a rawness and a vulnerability that silenced the venue entirely.
I'm proud of myself. I've never been as happy in my life, bro. I don't know.
That sense of disbelief, of looking back at a former version of himself with genuine confusion about how he survived it, was the through line of everything he said next. He had reached a point where the chemical fog had lifted just enough for him to survey the wreckage with clear eyes, and what he described to that crowd was staggering in its specificity.
Man, bro, I was taking, bro, at least 100 perks, but my average was 40 Percocets, bro.
100 Percocets at peak consumption, a daily average of 40 pills. To contextualize those numbers, a standard prescribed dose of oxycodone ranges from 5 to 30 milligrams taken every 4 to 6 hours. At 40 pills per day, even at the lowest available dosage per tablet, Kodak was consuming quantities that place a person at extreme risk of respiratory depression, organ failure, and death. At 100, the margin between survival and a fatal overdose effectively ceases to exist. It becomes a matter of biological luck, tolerance built through years of escalating use, and whether the pills happened to contain what they claimed to contain. Kodak himself acknowledged this directly, noting that fake pills circulating on the street could have killed him at any point during his peak usage, and expressing regret for glorifying drug use in his hit song, Super Gremlin, a track that had become an anthem in part because of how casually it referenced the very substances that were destroying him. By July 2024, he had vowed sobriety and stopped performing Super Gremlin entirely, telling fans that the song triggered memories he could no longer compartmentalize, memories of the darkest period of his addiction, of the person he had been when those lyrics felt like celebrations rather than confessions. He also reflected on the absurdity of his own survival, looking back at the numbers he had just shared with the visible disbelief of a man who understood mathematics should not have worked out in his favor. That moment of clarity, the genuine shock at his own continued existence, is what makes the timeline that followed so agonizing to trace, because the clarity did not last. It never does in addiction, and Kodak's story would prove that principle in the most public way imaginable. By November 2024, barely 5 months after that confession, the sobriety was gone. During an Instagram live session, Kodak responded to a fan who commented about liking him sober by declaring, "I'm never sober," and asserting that he was too young to die sober. The statement was not bravado dressed up as philosophy. It was fatalism stated plainly, a man announcing that he had weighed the options and chosen the one that ends early. Earlier that same month, during an appearance on Kai Cenat's Twitch stream, he appeared visibly erratic, sweating profusely, displaying disjointed behavior, and appeared to consume a substance on camera. When fans flooded his social media with concern afterward, he dismissed the reaction with, "I take one perk and y'all be so fucking butthurt," and actively blocked users who suggested he consider returning to treatment. In a separate, more reflective interview that touched on his history with substances and the decision to enter treatment voluntarily, Kodak had framed his approach to recovery in terms that mixed defiant pride with genuine vulnerability.
Like that, and then see with my see, I spoke on it.
He emphasized that his decision to enter a drug program had not been forced by a judge or triggered by an arrest. It was self-initiated, a distinction he took meaningful pride in because it separated him from the narrative of the reluctant addict dragged into treatment by the legal system.
Talked about it in like a voluntary drug court. And I did at my damn self.
That voluntary entry into treatment earned him respect from peers, counselors, and fans who saw it as proof that the desire to recover was genuine. But voluntary entry and sustained recovery are two entirely different achievements, and Kodak's trajectory would demonstrate that distinction in the most public, most painful way possible. Then came May 2025, when Kodak alarmed fans during an on-the-radar freestyle by referring to himself as a young A with a meth habit, a lyric that reignited the same fears that had briefly subsided after his mid-2024 sobriety pledges. He later clarified on a podcast that he had experimented with methamphetamine in the past, but was not actively using it, a distinction that provided zero comfort to a fan base that had watched this exact cycle of confession, sobriety, relapse, and minimization repeat itself so many times that the pattern had become its own form of predictability. $350,000, 5,000 turkeys, and a question nobody can answer. The cruelest dimension of Kodak Black's story is not the addiction itself. Addiction is a medical condition that afflicts millions without regard for talent, income, or intention. The cruelest dimension is the proximity of his best moments to his worst ones, the way the timeline places acts of extraordinary generosity directly alongside episodes of devastating self-destruction, as if the same person is living two lives simultaneously and neither one knows the other exists. While serving a court-ordered 90-day inpatient rehab program in late 2021, a sentence stemming from a probation violation related to drug use, Kodak did not retreat from public engagement. He redirected his energy into his community with a focus that contradicted every assumption about what a rapper in court-mandated treatment would spend his time doing. During that same treatment period, he organized and personally funded a Thanksgiving turkey drive that distributed over 5,000 turkeys to families across South Florida, spending approximately $1,425 of his own money to cover the cost. The distribution reached neighborhoods in Pompano Beach, his hometown, Delray Beach, Fort Lauderdale, North Miami, Miami's Little Haiti, and the Sistrunk and Sunland areas, all coordinated remotely through his Zachariah McQueen Foundation, while he remained physically present in the treatment facility, unable to attend the events he had made possible. In October of that same year, still within the walls of the rehab program, he hosted an event for over 20 breast cancer survivors, in collaboration with radio host Supa Cindy, providing each woman with wigs, direct financial financial support, a catered lunch, and personalized journals containing handwritten notes of encouragement from Kodak himself, messages written by a man in a treatment facility to women in a different kind of fight, each of them battling something that threatened to take their life. His attorney, Bradford Cohen, confirmed these efforts were coordinated remotely and described them as evidence of Kodak's genuine desire to grow beyond the version of himself that had landed him in that facility in the first place. Upon completing the 90-day program, the judge expressed satisfaction with his progress and lifted the probation violation. Kodak returned to performing almost immediately, playing Rolling Loud California shortly after his release, and described the period as a genuine reset, a moment where the person he wanted to be and the person he actually was had finally aligned. That was the version of Kodak Black that his fans, his family, his legal team, and even the court system wanted to believe was the permanent one. The version capable of organizing charity drives from inside a treatment facility, of writing notes to cancer survivors while grappling with his own mortality, of showing up for people he had never met while working to show up for himself. But the reset did not hold. The reset never holds. Not permanently, not in the way that the public demands permanence from people whose recovery plays out under stadium lights and trending hashtags. By February 2023, Kodak had missed a court-ordered drug test and subsequently tested positive for fentanyl, violating his bail terms from the 2022 oxycodone trafficking arrest. Broward County Judge Barbara Duffy ordered him into a 30-day drug rehab facility, but permitted a delay so he could honor a commitment to perform at Rolling Loud California first, a decision that, examined with the benefit of hindsight, illustrated the impossible tension between holding an addict accountable to the legal system and allowing him to maintain the career that funds both his lifestyle and the philanthropy that had, just months earlier, put 5,000 turkeys on 5,000 tables. In court, Kodak expressed a frustration that revealed something more complex than simple defiance of the system. He told the judge that the charitable work he did, the money he invested in his community, the turkeys and the wigs and the scholarships, none of it ever went as viral as his arrests. He questioned why people seemed more eager to see him incarcerated than to acknowledge his contributions. It was the exhaustion of a man who felt that the public had already written his ending and was simply waiting for reality to catch up to the narrative. Reports on whether he fully completed the 30-day program conflict, with some accounts indicating he did not attend or finish it, a failure that led to additional failed drug tests and further legal consequences. By the time of his December 2023 arrest and the subsequent Instagram live confession about his $350,000 investment in rehabilitation, that figure had become less a testament to progress and more a monument to the gap between financial resources and recovery outcomes, proof that money alone cannot purchase sobriety, no matter how many zeros appear on the check. In that same interview, where he discussed his voluntary entry into treatment, Kodak articulated a vision for what his recovery could look like in practice, not just abstinence for himself, but an infrastructure designed to help others escape the same trap.
I'm opening up a CBD shop. You know what I'm saying? Opening up a CBD shop. You know, SG sobriety game. For the people who like fighting to stay sober.
The concept, a CBD shop branded under Sobriety Gang, or SG, that would offer legal, non-addictive alternatives to the substances systematically destroying communities like the one he grew up in, represented the best possible version of what Kodak Black's platform, influence, and first-hand experience could accomplish. He was not speaking abstractly about sobriety as a concept. He was describing a business model built on the premise that the same energy and branding power that made drug culture look appealing could be redirected toward products and messaging that did not kill people.
Yeah, I'm gonna show people like, man, ain't no cool and all this crazy shit.
He wanted to dismantle the glamorization that he himself had helped construct through his own music and public persona, to demonstrate that choosing sobriety did not make a person weak or irrelevant, that the same authenticity fans respected in his lyrics could exist without the substances that had fueled so many of those lyrics.
And not leaning this way, positive, giving back, say no to drugs.
That aspiration, leaning toward positivity, toward giving back, toward a future where saying no is not considered soft, coexists in the same timeline as July 2025, when Kodak was released from jail after yet another probation violation and sentenced to time served with no rehab component mentioned. It coexists with his stated position that he will not pursue additional rehabilitation, viewing every past attempt as ineffective and expressing what multiple sources describe as a fatalistic attitude toward overdose. The posture of a man who has stopped believing that the ending can be rewritten. And yet, somehow, that same man received the key to Pompano Beach in July 2025 for his cumulative charitable contributions to the city, a recognition that encompassed the turkeys, the breast cancer event, donated AC units for low-income families, water shipments to Haiti, and rent assistance for hundreds of Pompano Beach residents. He was simultaneously a man his city honored and a man his city feared for. He held a ceremonial key in one hand, and if the pattern held, something far more dangerous in the other. That is the contradiction the Texas footage forces into inescapable focus. The man being held upright by his security guard is the same man who bought 5,000 turkeys for families he would never meet while sitting in a rehab facility he entered because a judge ordered him to. The man who told a live audience he was too young to die sober is the same man who told a different live audience months earlier that he was proud of himself for the first time in his entire life. The man whose fans are begging him to get help is the same man who once planned to open a sobriety-focused business specifically designed to help others escape the exact trap he himself remains caught in. These are not different people. This is one person, and the distance between his best self and his worst self is measured not in years or miles, but in the unpredictable, uncontrollable chemistry of addiction. His team has not publicly addressed the Texas footage, following a pattern of silence or denial in response to similar past incidents. Fans continue to call for intervention, drawing comparisons to peers like Fivio Foreign, who have publicly entered treatment and documented their progress. Kanye has offered, Boosie has spoken, Kai Cenat has prayed. The comment sections remain full of people who care and empty of anyone who can actually change the outcome. And the clips keep circulating, each one a timestamp in a decline that everyone can see, and no one seems able to stop. The question the Texas footage leaves behind is not whether Kodak Black needs help. That answer has been obvious for years. The question is whether the help that exists, the $350,000 in rehab programs, the court-ordered facilities, the voluntary admissions, the prayers from streamers, the offers from billionaire rappers, the 4-word pleas from Boosie Badazz, is capable of reaching a man who has already decided, publicly and repeatedly, that none of it works. And if it is not capable of reaching him, then what the internet watched in that Texas venue was not a performance gone wrong. It was not a scheduling issue compounded by a bad night. It was a countdown, broadcast live and filmed from every angle, with no one on stage or in the audience who knew how to make it stop. Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.